Apportionments is something that was started with John Wesley to help fund. It was the idea that with the Methodist people, if everybody contributes a little bit into a common pot, if you will, then we can combine our funds and help poor people. So it started out with all the cell groups, if you will. They didn't call them cells. We do. They called them classes and bands. Were asked to give. Every member was asked to give like a penny a week to a fund for widows and orphans. And that's where they started. But the apportionments is what we call apportionments, persist to this day. It means that every United Methodist Church, so I'll just use Iowa, the Iowa Annual Conference, there are 750 United Methodist congregations in Iowa between the rivers. We're asked according to our income for a year, then we're given an amount that we have to pay in an apportionment to fund things all over the world. And I'm giving a good company line here to fund things all over the world, boards and agencies and mission and ministry. A good part of my professional life as a pastor and my service to the Iowa Annual Conference and to the General Conference has been, though, to reform the apportionment system. Many years I've given to trying to reform it because I believe, along with a lot of other people, that our bureaucracy has grown way too big and it's taking too much money out of the local church that we could use here. Okay, but that's a unique part of Methodism. And you can either love it or hate it or be indifferent towards it. But, in trying to explain what apportionments are through the years, some people have understood them as a franchise fee. Okay. This is what we pay. We pay this. It means we get to have the golden arches and we have to buy food from McDonald's. Okay, we're McDonald's. We're going to sell 1 billion hamburgers. That's one way to understand it. Some people look at it as a tax. Other people look at it on the high side and say we can join our dollars to support mission and ministry around the world and do things that individual congregations cannot. Second A word is appointments. Okay. And so one of the unique things about Methodism is that I don't work for Grandview. Now I serve here, and this is my home. And you've heard me say this. There's no other church I want to be, and that's a fact. I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. But I'm technically employed by the Iowa Annual Conference. As an ordained elder, I'm a member of the Iowa Annual Conference. Even though I still, my home church is Creston, Iowa, and I still support them, technically I'm not a member anymore. I'm a member of the Iowa Annual Conference as an ordained elder. So you're thinking, well, what do you mean we don't employ you? Of course we do. We put money in the plate and that pays your salary. When the money goes into the plate, or when I say plate, it could be online or whatever, that money becomes the property of the Iowa Annual Conference, and the Grandview is entrusted to spend that money wisely. And this is a Methodist thing. This was set up by John Wesley. So in other words, why would we have such a weird system? Well, it means that in a local church, if they've got checking accounts and banking accounts, and they've got a building and they've got property, and all the members get mad and say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to leave. Well, it doesn't mean that the members get to divide up that checking account. Like, what kind of mess would that be? And so I'm giving you a real broad brushstrokes of our polity, but that's why it technically belongs to the Iowa Annual Conference. The building, the property, the bank accounts, the savings accounts, the checking accounts are all held in trust for the Iowa Annual Conference. And this is where our administrative board, which is the third A I'm going to talk about in a minute, they administer that on behalf of the Iowa Annual Conference. So appointments. All United Methodist pastors are appointed by the bishop and a cabinet to a United Methodist congregation. The United Methodist congregation does not have to go out and do interviews. They don't do a job search. They can't fire their pastor. Now, in effect, they can. If it's all going wrong, they talk to the district superintendent or they write letters to the bishop and say, get this person out of here. But technically, the church can't fire their pastor. What's supposed to happen is the first A word, apportionments. If the church pays their apportionments, they're guaranteed to always have a pastor. So, like, literally, our system is a pastor is appointed to serve a church like Grandview. And so in 2009, when Pastor Jim Dodson retired, he left. He had his final Sunday, and he moved out of the parsonage like on Monday, and I moved in on Wednesday. And so the church literally is never without a pastor. And so, unlike some other congregations have to do a pastoral search and interviews and such. So this is similar to Catholicism in that a bishop or a diocese appoints priests. So Methodists have the same thing. So an appointment used to be, when I first started in 1985, as a student pastor, it was just expected I would move every 2 years. And that was a holdover from John Wesley. Move every 2 years if you were doing a good job, good, bad, or otherwise. The Methodist system is a ladder. And so, whoever's entrusted with a little and you do a good job, you're entrusted with more. So that was typical. Methodist appointments once upon a time were for a year or two. And that was based on John Wesley's belief that, one pastor comes in and has got a leadership style voice and this and that, but they can go to another, unplug, plug in, plug and play, and the next pastor will come and take that church to the next level. And that theory worked maybe, I don't know, in 1700 and 1800, and then it stopped working. So appointments now still work that way. Pastors are appointed by the bishop 1 year at a time. The United Methodist Church learned that the healthiest churches and the churches that grow really start growing and getting healthier after the 7th year of a pastor's appointment in that place. So they've studied this, they've looked at it. So if you look at the top 10 United Methodist churches in Iowa, all of us have served our congregations 10 years or more, with the exception of Mike Janes, I think down in Ankeny, but anyway, Mike's, that's Ankeny's different. That's our largest United Methodist church, or it used to be. But that's the appointment thing. When a pastor has a lot of years of experience, not that they're old, they just have lots of years of experience. We have a lot of say in this. Okay, when you're younger, it's an unwritten rule, and part of it's a guarantee. So I made a deal with the bishop and the conference when I was ordained an elder. I will go wherever you send me. In return, assuming I'm always doing good work, you will always send me. It's also called guaranteed employment. Okay, that's the deal we make. One of the unique things about Grandview, and that we were a leader in here in Iowa, was creating a single board model. And what that means is that in most congregations, and certainly in most churches, they would have a different committees. And I don't like committees. I don't like standing committees. I've spent too many years of having meetings for the sake of having a meeting instead of accomplishing anything. And it drives me nuts. And I'd looked at a model out in Ohio at Ginghamsburg with a big church, 12 people. 12 people take on all the responsibilities for the finance committee, the trustees committee, the administrative board, the staff parish, which is like our HR, that deals with personnel. And so in 2010, we made that switch, and we moved to a single board model here. And so we have 12 people that serve terms of 3 years. And I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but basically they have the responsibility as well as the authority to make those decisions about money and about property and about people, is what our administrative board does. So that's freed us up as a congregation. It's cleared our calendar, because that was my other decision in 2010, is I said, if I'm going to have people meeting in this building several nights a week, I want them to be here in a cell group growing spiritually. And so we'll have a smaller number that'll do the business. And it worked. The first couple of years was a little bumpy, but we made it work. We're still making it work. And we have, Grandview has taught a number of congregations around the state how to do a single board model for administration, and it works. And I'm going to tell you the last thing about why it works and why Grandview works. Trust. A single board model works because it operates on trust. And by that I mean, when we moved to being what I call a just say yes church, and that was probably 6, 7 years ago, I had the administrative board read a book called Just Say Yes. And it was a game changer in attitudes about, instead of being a church that's all about permission giving, like, well, we need to get permission from the board, or we need, we got to be careful, we moved to trusting and saying yes unless something's really crazy. And it was the way I articulated that is, part of my job as a leader of this church is, if somebody has a burning bush moment and they feel like God's talking to them, my job is to ask some questions about it, but to throw gasoline on that burning bush, not a cold blanket. And that's what we tried to train up our administrative board to do the same thing. Yes, take responsibility and take seriously, the administration of the church, but we have to be willing to risk and to try things. And so the trust came in how this church functions, without a whole bunch of committees.